Hey, how's it going? This is the Anime Convention Beginner's Guide. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to pick the right costume for you, especially for your first convention. Whether you're going as a single character or as part of a group, there are a few different things that you need to think about when you're trying to pick the right character and who to dress up as. Whatever costume you choose, you want to make sure it's something you're comfortable in. And I'm not just talking about the hot, sweaty, and itchy kind of comfortable either. You have to be comfortable with people seeing you in it, taking your picture, and if it's too revealing, they'll be staring at you too. So just be prepared for that. If you're going as part of a group, you want to make sure everybody in the group maintains communication throughout the costuming process. You want to make sure everybody's on the same level as far as quality is concerned, maybe as far as materials even. You don't want to show up at the convention wearing cardboard when your partner's wearing molded plastic. It's just not going to look right. When you're doing the group cosplay thing, you want to make sure that the people with the most experience are helping the beginners increase their skills and helping the group really to get costumes that are sort of on the same level. You don't need to push everybody to their limits. I wouldn't even recommend stressing out over it, especially if you have beginners in your group, because it's just unneeded stress. Just work together, do the best you can, and have fun with it. You don't necessarily need to pick an anime character. You could do something from an American cartoon, a web comic, live action, sci-fi, just about anything. I mean, just pick something that you like, that you're comfortable wearing. That's what's important. The character you choose has a big impact on how many people take your picture. If having your picture taken isn't your thing, that's fine. Most people will stop and ask permission to take your picture. They do a little pose. It's okay to say no. Don't be afraid to say no. It's alright. The other thing to think about as far as that's concerned is if you do something mainstream, you might think you're going to get a lot of attention that way. If you want to be Ichigo or something from Bleach, you're like, well, everybody loves Bleach, right? I'll take my picture. Well, that's kind of the problem. Aside from the cosplay, the photo shoots, people might not take your picture because there are so many of them. They'll be walking the halls and say, okay, well, oh, that's an Ichigo. Oh, I don't need another Ichigo. It's fine. With that, if you want to do a mainstream anime, I would stick with the lesser-known characters, maybe, or just stay away from the main character set. That'll get you more attention, because there are fewer chances that other people will dress the same way. On the other hand, if you pick a character from an anime that's a little too obscure, maybe something that hasn't been picked up for an English dub yet, it's not going to have as much exposure here. You're not going to get as much attention as maybe as much as you want. You might get one or two fanboys that run up to you and they're like, "Oh my God, I need your picture! That's so awesome! You're so and so! Oh, that's so cool!" But really, that's probably the only person that'll do that, except for the people that walk up to you and say, "Oh yeah, I know you. You're from what's your name again? What character are you?" You get a lot of that if you're somebody that isn't from a mainstream anime. People want to know who you are, but they really don't. I mean, they'll act like they know who you are just to talk to you. But really, you can avoid all that aggravation just by choosing an anime and a character, or a video game, or whatever, a character that is relatively well known, but you don't have to be Ichigo. It's not necessary to brain stopped. Yeah, you don't have to be Vegeta. It's okay. Walk in as Piccolo. I don't know. If you're a parent and you're bringing your kid to the convention, instead of just wandering around behind them, making sure they're not getting into trouble, consider asking them if there's a character that you could play. You don't have to be over the top with it. For example, if they're a Pokemon, ask them if you could be like Brock or Professor Oak or something. get into it. It's a lot of fun, and if you do it that way, it increases photo ops for your kid. And you know, that's one of the best parts is having your picture taken, because that makes you feel like all the effort you've put in your costume is worth it. That's the payoff. Is when somebody recognizes you, they know what character you are, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's the best Bulbasaur I've ever seen. I need the oh my God, it's Professor Oak. Oh my God, I gotta get it. That's awesome. Do it." You're going to want to start with a simple costume, something that's not overly binding or bulky, something that will allow you to get through the crowds and see everything that the convention has to offer, especially if it's your first convention, because you don't know exactly what to expect as far as how long you can stay on your feet in your costume. If you're using a really bulky costume, it can get heavy, especially after 8-10 hours on your feet walking through the crowds. And, you know, certain costumes you can't even sit down in. So you really want to be cautious with that. Experiment with simple costumes first, and then move up from there. Take into account the size of the character you're playing. You can bring a character that's 8 or 10 feet tall, or even like a Gundam down to a human size, but there's really no getting the bulk out of that. Something, to use for an example here, Norm from Phineas and Ferb, you know, we cut about 2 feet off of his, you know, off of his total size, and it's still a bulky costume. It's really uncomfortable to wear. It requires a wrangler, which basically means the costume is so big, and then you have the head. When you have this on, you can't see anything. So you have to have a wrangler. It's just somebody that guides you through. Basically, you're walking blind, and they're just holding your hand, kind of guiding you by your shoulder sometimes, and you kind of have to scoot everybody out of the way, because you can't see. Something else to think about is whether or not your character has any props that he's going to carry. If it's too big and cumbersome, you might not get through the crowds very well. It's going to make things slow going. Sometimes conventions have rules against props, and you know, especially over a certain size. Sometimes you can't bring them in if they're over your head. Guns have a lot of limitations on them. Sometimes even swords. You just have to look at the website for each convention's specific rules, because and every year they'll update. You know, somebody will ruin it for us next year, and something else will come into play, and yeah, just stay on top of that. The other problem with having a prop that's too big, you know, especially if you're going to be walking around the convention all weekend long, you really, you know, you might not want to carry something like a Buster Sword. I mean, you could make it so maybe you can carry it on your shoulder, or you can mount it on your back somehow, but really, unless it's constructed really well, it's gonna wear you down over time. You're not gonna want to do that all weekend, and if it's a main part of the costume, it makes it kind of hard to leave behind. Something else to think about is footwear: boots, shoes, sandals. The character that you're playing might be barefoot, but the convention probably has rules against walking around barefoot. A lot of times you have to wear sandals at least. And, you know, you don't have to have boots that match the character perfectly. And sometimes it's just not possible to get accurate boots from, I mean, they can be big and bulky. Sometimes, you know, you'll make a boot covering, and that can be hard to walk in. But sometimes it's the only way to get it accurate, durable enough to get through the convention. You know, they're not pretty, but they're your feet. And, you know, people will see your feet, but don't be so obsessed over what they look like that you go into the convention with shoes that are uncomfortable. You don't want to walk around for 3 days in something that's going to give you blisters. If you can't think of a human character you want to play, consider a Gajinka. Basically, all a Gajinka is a small or non-human form character interpreted into a human form. Basically, you take a Pokemon and you say, okay, it's Pikachu. Make samurai armor. A samurai Pikachu. Simple, fun, and relatively cheap. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, subscribe. I have a lot more coming. If you have any questions or comments, post them below and I will address them in future videos. Until then, remember kids, only you can prevent con drama.